What inspired you to become a coach?
Thank you for asking that question, and thanks for having me, Michael. So, what inspired me to become a coach? It really goes back to my roots, to be honest. I am a third generation Holocaust survivor, meaning my grandparents survived concentration camps. And the way that that inspired me to become a coach is that my whole growing up was all about survival. My grandparents learned to be survivors. They were young during the Holocaust. They came to the United States with nothing. They built a family, they started a business, but it was always about survival. And so my parents, that is really the theme of my childhood and growing up. And even into my early career, I started out, my original career is as a speech and language pathologist, and I started out working in a NICU step down unit with medically fragile babies doing feeding therapy. And it was all just survival. And as I have become a parent and transitioned into my 30s, I started to really want to focus on not just this survival, but how to thrive. So I went on a deep dive in my own life personally. That involved career and involved also a triathlete, the sports piece, which is where the wellness comes in, and learned a lot, studied a lot. Feel like I've learned so much about what it means to thrive that then I discovered the field of coaching. Felt like it had always been a calling, to be honest. My original when I first was in college, I did graduate as a psychology major, but I thought about being a therapist. But my parents actually said, "Well, do you want to be with, depressed people all the time?" And not knowing any differently, I was like, "Yeah, no, I don't." So, but I still was in this survival mode, didn't really know, was listening to my parents. But what I love about coaching actually is that it's all about thriving. So we build on positive psychology and strengths, and it's about taking people from languishing to flourishing. So that is my story.
What are some of your methods?
Some of my methods. So I pull both from health and wellness coaching as well as from the ICF. Like I'm certified in both areas. And some of the methods that I use are the strengths. I really like to help people to become connected to what is already going well with them, what they are naturally endowed with. So we do some strengths assessments. I also like to use saboteurs, which are those things that usually there are overuse of strengths. So what might be getting in the way for people, and build mindfulness around both how to identify what are those saboteurs and then how to transition through curiosity and mindfulness to tapping into strengths. I specifically focus in communication coaching as well as life and health, and I integrate it all together because we're really one integrated being. And so I pull from motivational interviewing, which is part of the health and wellness. And a lot of times people come into health and wellness coaching because they need to make a change, not because they're desiring to. So we need to build motivation. And then through life coaching, it's a lot of exploration, a lot of values assessment, a lot of visualizing what a best outcome could look like. And I pull all of that together.
How does it feel for you when you see your clients succeed?
I feel like coaching is really a calling. And when my clients succeed, it feels really inspiring. I'm really inspired by my clients every day. Recently, I had a client, Sarah, who was a really high performing professional. She was juggling career, family, being a parent, being a spouse, being a daughter. And while on paper it all was looking really good, she was really struggling. And she came in feeling really burned out, really low energy, overweight. This is kind of where that blend comes together. So, through looking at her strengths, through looking at her saboteurs, looking at what her goals are, what she wants to achieve, being able to put in some boundaries, some self-care, we were able to move her from that languishing into being intentional about how she shows up at work, being intentional about how she shows up at home with her family and with her kids. And I've been working with her about 6 months, and she now has a trip planned to Europe with her family, and she's walking every day. She's lost a ton of weight, and that's her goal, is to be able to, walk several miles a day, which she wasn't doing any of that before. And she's also seeing in her career that she's so much more satisfied. She's decided she's good with the level that she's at. She's not necessarily looking to climb the corporate ladder, even though the environment that she's in really encourages that. She's had to get clear in her own mind what she wants and to prioritize those things. And it is just so gratifying to see these changes in people's lives and how they are so much more empowered and living lives that are more meaningful.
I know for me, I have big goals of being a leader in the mental health video and media space. And you're working with people who have huge goals as well. What drives you to be helping these amazing people?
Yeah, first of all, I love that you have big goals to be a leader in that space. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
My personal strengths, I believe, are really what drives me. But in my own, I know my purpose, and my life's purpose is to support others to flourish. So I love both working on myself, which I did initially, and supporting others and helping them to find that in themselves and to be able to take off the narratives and the stories that they've been telling themselves that don't serve them, that have been getting in their own way, to look at their life and to be in that driver's seat and decide what they want to keep, what they don't want to keep, where they want to focus. It is just so gratifying. I can't think of anything else that is more meaningful. And every day I wake up excited to work with my clients.
I want to ask about burnout, because you hear that a lot with in your job and stuff. So what do people need to look out for with burnout?
Yeah, burnout is, I think it's really huge right now. I think a piece of it is the remote work environment. People are working remotely. They're alone a lot of the time. They're not getting as much of that social connection. So it is really prevalent. Burnout also, if you catch it early, it's much easier to course correct than if you are really, far along, because like anything else, there's physical manifestations. Burnout could start with poor sleep. It could be low motivation. Often, really at the root is stress, because our sleep gets disrupted if our hormones are imbalanced. Our sleep gets disrupted from cortisol. Our sleep gets disrupted if we're waking up and we're thinking about stressors and worries. So sleep disruption, lack of motivation to exercise. If you're someone who likes exercising and you're not motivated to do it anymore, could be a red flag. What's going on? Why is that happening? To start questioning it. Also, not feeling connected to the work that you're doing, lacking that sense of connection or purpose can lead to burnout. I talk to people so often who have golden handcuffs. On paper, they like their job, but they really don't feel connected to what they're doing. And sometimes it's just a mental shift to be connected. Not just a mental shift. That's huge. But it is a mental shift to be connected to what they're doing. And that can make all the difference in feeling that you have a purpose, that it's meaningful, your contributions. Also, changes in diet patterns can be another area. Not socializing, not feeling like you want to spend time with people that normally you would want to spend time with. That would be another red flag. And fatigue is usually the one. People just come in drained.
You touched on it a little bit, but for me, I do a good job focusing on my mental health. I have treatment, I see a therapist and all that, but physical health, no, I lack motivation there, but how important is it to take care of both your mental health and physical health at the same time?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're doing a lot really well. So I want to commend you on that.
Thank you.
Physical health is huge. Physical health in terms of, I mean, in so many ways, right? So physical health is kind of like the foundation of your house. You can't really build an upstairs and you can't really thrive if your physical health is not structurally sound, because our body is where we house our brain. And thinking of it as like this is the vessel that you live in and that you have to go through life. And sometimes I get this with younger people because they haven't yet felt or had negative consequences, but physical health will 100% of the time catch up with you at some point. And it's usually not very convenient when it does. And and so while you might be able to get away with it early on, there are still like the rising rates of diabetes type 2 in teenagers is staggering. Even in children, they are getting diabetes type 2. And diabetes type 2 is like known to lead to dementia. It's one of the Alzheimer's is considered like diabetes type 3. It's like all connected. So there are underpinnings for disease happening later. So that's one thing to ward that off. But in terms of mental health and the connection between mind and body, they're so connected. So when we move our body, we regulate our hormones. Our hormones are connected to everything that happens in our body. When we move our body, we reduce cortisol levels. Cortisol is directly related to what happens in your gut and to leaky gut. Your gut is where most of the serotonin is found in your body. And so just through even these mechanisms, they are all connected. And sometimes people think, well, I was never an athlete, or I don't really, it's like not a good use of my time. But actually, when you do hard, intense exercise, even just for a couple minutes, it releases something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which actually grows your brain. So you will be smarter. Your brain will work more efficiently and better, be able to regulate mood better if you are giving it the proper input, the proper movement that it needs.
Have you seen your clients' confidence level rise as they go through the process?
I would say confidence is probably one of the biggest factors that changes
Yeah.
in coaching. A big piece of what distinguishes coaching, let's say from therapy. Therapy is amazing, but therapy is really designed to relieve suffering, where coaching is designed to say you already are endowed with what is wonderful. You have it all in you already. I'm going to help bring it out. I'm going to help you see maybe some mindsets and some things that are getting in the way and how to shift out of it, but it's a very empowering process. And the idea behind coaching is that you feel supported. Number one, I help cheerlead you and support you to achieve the goals that you want to achieve, but you're also coming up with the solutions. So that's a really empowering process, is that I'm not telling you, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to change, you should do it this way, or think about, I'm not the expert. I am your partner. And that's a very different mindset. And that in and of itself is an empowering relationship. That's part of why coaching has become so popular. And part of why it exists, to be honest, is that it was missing. And so I also do communication coaching. And a big piece of what people come in is they want to be more confident. So I get a lot of people who are people managers and they've been promoted to be a leader, or they want to be a leader, and they don't know what to do. They have done a really great job getting to that point. They've been really good technically. They've been really good at their job. They're really responsible, whatever. They've been really good at all those things, but they don't know how to lead people. They don't know how to pull people to them. And so they push. They push to get the deadlines met. They push to try to get everything done. There's too much of that control. So by teaching people some of those skills, it's very empowering.
Yeah, I definitely hear the passion in your voice, how you enjoy helping others, but what do you do to help your own mental health?
Thank you for asking that. That is a great question. Um, so I mean, like some of my clients in my 30s, part of what drove me to coaching was my own burnout. And I was working full time as a speech and language pathologist, which I still do some of that work and I love it. But I was doing too much. I had small kids. My husband was working a crazy job. I was trying to manage my own practice, do a half Ironman and a marathon, and like be the superwoman that so many women try to be. And I was like trying to do the perfect diet and all this stuff. That was kind of the time period in my 30s when I hit the burnout wall. So that was the start of my deep dive into, whoa, like this is not working. I need to figure this out. And since then, I've really developed some habits to support my own mental health. One of which is I work with a functional medicine doctor, and I have a really dialed in nutrient supplement regimen that I use every day to support my body from the inside out, to support nutrients, to support my brain health. So that's one. I also wear an Aura ring. Are you familiar with an Aura ring?
No.
Okay. An Aura ring is a sleep tracker device. What I love about it, and I don't work for them, so I'm not promoting it, but what I love about it is that it's small, right? It's not like a watch. So I sleep with it. But what it tells me, because I used to overdo, right? So some people need to do more. I needed to do less.
No.
So it tells me what was the quality of my sleep. It gives me an expectation for kind of what kind of day can I have. Do I need some more self-compassion that day? Can I push hard because I love exercise? It also gives me a readiness reading, which is not always 100% accurate, but it's usually in the ballpark of accurate. And I really I listen to it. If it's low, I will change my plans for the day. It also helps me adjust my narrative around some of my saboteurs, which is perfectionism, that I can like scale it back a little bit. I don't need it to be perfect. It's going to be a harder day, and that's okay. So it gives me like data, and I like that. And it also tells me my heart rate variability, which is, are you familiar with that term?
No, this is all new to
Like,
me. Yes.
yeah. Okay, HRV is a term which refers to the amount of time between your heartbeats. And the higher the number, meaning the higher the variability, the more ready your heart actually is for whatever. I actually find stress impacts my HRV much more than hard cardio or exercise. But I kind of like wake up each morning and take that temperature check, just like you do with the weather before you get dressed. So it gives me a sense of, okay, this is today's weather forecast a little bit. And it takes into account hormones, and it takes into account, like I said, stress, and if you're not feeling well and all that stuff. A couple weeks ago, I had COVID and I didn't realize it. And I kept getting low HRVs. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I really use it. And then I decided I'm going to take a COVID test. I know nobody does that anymore, but I just feel tired. Like, this virus isn't getting better. And I was like, it was COVID. So then I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. That's why my HRV was lower than I would expect. Um, so I start with that. I also start with some mindfulness every day. I do a little bit of an intention setting and some breath work. I like to always be learning something so that I'm inspired. So I do some sort of learning in the coaching space or the health and wellness space or communication. And I do daily exercise, usually in the morning. I love Pilates. I love running and biking, and I do a mix of cardio and strength training. So I do that every day before I see clients because it really energizes me so that I have energy to pour over and to give to others. And I also really know my values, and I live according to my values. And I haven't always, like when I was pushing in certain ways, now I've kind of scaled that back. My family is my top value. So I'm always like kind of checking in on where I am with relationships, with family. There's a model by Martin Seligman called the PERMA model. It stands for positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. So often, by the way, people come in burned out when they're only focused on achievement because that's
Yeah.
like what we're
Yeah.
taught in school, right? So I like to bring that up, that this is the model for well-being. So I like to keep that model kind of at the forefront, and I use it as a little bit of a weekly check-in. Like, how am I doing on all these different areas? Do I need a little bit more in one area? And do I need a little more in another area? And then I also have different coaching groups that I'm part of, so that I'm part of that network and community. I think community is really, really important. So I engage with the community. I'm doing some different volunteer work. And I mean, like anybody else, I have challenges too. My father right now has cancer, which has been really hard. And it's definitely been a test for my mental health, and needing to know when I need to set more boundaries, when I need more self-care, when I am maybe over leveraging that perfectionism and trying to do too much. So it's a constant balance, but I do feel like I've got a pretty full toolbox.
And you are a support system, but do you have a support system to help yourself?
Um, yes, I do. First of all, I have a wonderful, loving husband, so I consider him a big part of my support system. I currently am partnering with a nutritionist for a program that I'm coming out with, and we've been working together to build our businesses. It's really fun to have another female entrepreneur to work with as well. And I have coaches that I work with, and my functional medicine doctor, I see monthly, and it's not because I'm sick. It's because I am committed to longevity and wellness.
What would you say to anyone going through a tough time?
Um, Anyone going through a tough time, I would say to not be afraid of the feelings that come up when you're going through a tough time, to get curious about those feelings and to feel them, but to not get stuck there. Because through everything, there is a window and a pathway forward. So to look at, what is the growth area here? How can I see a path forward? What might this be coming up to illuminate for me? And to embrace those as part of the human experience, but to also have the skills and to be able to transition it into positive growth forward. Even the worst things can be positive in some way. I mean, maybe not everything, but in general, most things, they will pass, if nothing else.
Where do you want to see your mission in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
So I love learning and deepening my knowledge. So I want to continue to become the best version of myself as a coach and human. I also am working on growing my private coaching business. I've been coaching for about 5 years and have been private coaching for about 3 years, and am growing it. Like I said, I'm working with this amazing nutritionist, and we've put together a new women's empowerment coaching group that's both nutrition and mindset. And because we know also the power of community is huge. So community, nutrition, mindset, it's like got everything in it. I would love to grow those groups, as well as work more with one-on-one clients in the private coaching space.
How can people reach out and learn more?
So I'm on LinkedIn. That's a great, easy way. Tracy Klein, Coach One, TracyKlein. I have a website, www.inspiredhealthwellness.com. I know it's kind of long. No spaces, just inspiredhealthwellness.com. We are having a free webinar, just an intro webinar in 2 weeks, about the women's coaching group. That is really exciting, and would love for some of your listeners to join if they're interested in both areas. But then I also do the one-on-one coaching as well.